Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all races, colors, and creeds, welcome back to the greatest show on earth. Yes, it is the greatest show on earth. And you can say you heard it here first. I'm Greg Anthony on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. How are you today? Got a great show for you. Of course, I have to give you my Wuhan virus update, and I'm going to do that in the second hour because, boy, we've been talking a lot about that crap, haven't we? And let me tell you, you know my thoughts about it. You've listened to the mainstream media babble and babble and babble on. Maybe they're in Babylon, but anyway, or connected to Babylon. You can't believe a word they're saying because you're getting everything going from one end of the map to the other. It's the most serious thing since the Black Death to don't worry about it. Just wash your hands and you'll be fine. I'll give you the update in the second half hour, but today I want to spend a little time on a subject that's close to my heart. It's about prison reform. And let me tell you something. I ran into a group that's out of Long Beach, California, and they're called UniteThePeople.org, and I'm going to highlight them today because their story is unbelievable, as well as highlighting a case by the name of Abijah Williams. And this is a guy that sits in a California prison, and the evidence is basically overwhelming that this guy was framed. And Unite the People has taken on his case, and I'll get into that in a second. But let me tell you, just give you a backdrop on criminal reform. And, you know, first of all, what I get from people when I say this is, well, keep them in jail. We want crime, law and order, etc., etc. But when law and order goes haywire, and basically they're trying to look for convictions because basically maybe there was a case one time when I looked into it that the more convictions that this district attorney would get, the more money from the federal government. So there were incentives to put innocent people behind bars, and there's a lot of them that sit in California prisons. Now, Trump has taken on prison reform, and you've probably seen on the national news that he's pardoned a couple of people that didn't belong in prison. And you know what I'm talking about. Who else has gotten on the bandwagon? Kim Kardashian actually spoke in behalf of President Trump. I remember a White House speech when they were releasing a few people that were basically being held for an enormous amount of time for crimes that basically all these white-collar people in Washington, the Clintons, etc., go scot-free. But anyway, let's center on Abijah Williams and Unite the People. Now, Unite the People, let me tell you about this. California, I've got an interest in criminal law, and I help them out, taking cases and helping research cases for them. But let me explain this. When I was in law school, I was working on a law school paper, and I was working on a extensive paper on the California Three Strikes Law, which just had passed based on the poly-class murder, if you go back to when this law was passed. And the intention was to put convicted felons that had 3 felonies, serious felonies, in jail for life. Well, that 3 strikes law has since been amended because it's been really ridiculous. I remember 2 of the cases back then that I featured when I was writing a law review article on it was a woman who was in jail for life. She'd been there 12 years, I believe, and she had a marijuana conviction, and she had 2 thefts, one stealing minor stuff from a 7-Eleven, and the third one, was stealing tools out of a hardware store for her husband who was broke and they needed money and he needed tools to work. So she got sentenced to life. So that gives you an idea of basically what happened with that 3 strikes law. One of the harshest laws in the country. It's since been amended, and there's a number of reforms that Unite the People has taken on, and what they do is they try to help out people who can't afford an attorney, and there are many of them, and to get some of these people who don't deserve to be spending their life in prison or an inordinate amount of time, and it's a worthy cause. Now, I firmly believe that if some guy commits a violent felony, and there's, he receives justice, and justice is fair, and he's given a long sentence, so be it. But each case needs to be looked at on a case-to-case basis. And so I looked at the crazy stuff going on in California, and I said, man, there's so many people. They're talking about overcrowding in the prisons, et cetera, et cetera. And then I started looking at some of these cases, and it hasn't gotten much better since the time I was doing that law review. So I hooked up with Unite the People, and what a organization they are. They're doing a great job. They're out of Long Beach, and it's a nonprofit organization that was formed in 2014 by a small group of concerned citizens, defense attorneys, and families and friends. But it was really spearheaded by a guy by the name of Mitch McDowell. Now, I've since talked to Mitch a number of times, and I'm going to feature him on his story, which, if you think Abijah Williams, when I start talking about him today, should be released, or at least gets to get a fair hearing in a habeas corpus filing, then you ought to listen to what happened to Mitch McDowell, who formed this group, what happened to his brother. And instead of me going through it, I'm going to bring Mitch on in the next weeks to come to tell you this story, and you're going to see why there needs to be a look at some of our harsh criminal justice outcomes. Now, we've talked in this show about the two-tier justice system in Washington, and you're seeing it right now. You're seeing, if you're a Republican and you jaywalk, you're going to be put in solitary confinement. And if you're a Clinton Democrat or you're on the side of the globalists, you're going to walk free even if you commit murder or high treason. Or like Hillary Clinton, just to give you an example, did you ever look at the Benghazi story? Or did you ever look at her getting rid of 30-some thousand emails after being subpoenaed and basically putting all of our secrets on a private server? Man, she got nothing. And there's a guy who was remember the one Trump pardoned? He was on a submarine, and he took a little picture. He was on this classified submarine, took a picture for his mother to show him where he was working, and he got a year in jail. Trump got him out. This is what's going on. So we have a two-tier justice system in Washington. But down at the lower levels, you see a two-tier justice system as well. And one, if you have money, maybe you're going to get a fair trial. If you don't have money, you're going to be basically up against a system that's looking for a lot of convictions and filling up prisons. And some of these prosecutors really ought to, this one, for example, that took evidence in Abijah Williams' case and just distorted it, man, they ought to be called out. So Unite the People, after Mitch McDowell and his brother had this unbelievable story, he decided to start this group. And it's a group of concerned citizens, like I said, defense attorneys, families and friends, incarcerated loved ones, to fight for the social justice and deal with a national problem of mass incarceration. And Trump has even admitted it. And the need for prison and sentencing reform. Now, in California, I'm well aware of some of the new laws that have passed recently. And they provide a out for some people who have been sentenced to crimes based on enhancements for being in gangs that wasn't properly adjudicated, based on a number of things that can lower their sentences, and there's avenues to do that. But we're going to talk today about Abijah Williams, and he's sitting in the Corcoran State Prison. He's been there for 13 years. And I want to highlight his case, and I've got a statement from him. I spoke to him yesterday from prison. And I also have contacted the investigator on his case because he hired a private investigator. And it's really an interesting story. And I've got to get to this right now. And let me do this right now. I've got to get to Abijah Williams. as soon as I can pull up the statement that we took down yesterday. Okay, here you go. Now, let me tell you this, that he's, like I said, sits in jail for 13 years now. Listen to this story, and I had a chance to speak with him yesterday. And his name is Abijah Williams. He's been in jail for the past 13 years. And in his own words, he says this: I've been incarcerated for a crime that I was convicted of, however, did not commit. I'm hoping and I'm praying that someone out there will listen to me and help me to get my story out. Now, I add that Unite the People has taken on his case, and it's quite interesting. He said, I got incarcerated at the age of 25 from changing my life, spending all my teens in the California Youth Authority. I'm from L.A., California, and moved to the Inland Empire. My occupation was I was in club promotion. I got into the business of helping and promoting nightclubs throughout the Inland Empire, and my uncle, MC Big D, from 2003 to 2006. Growing up, I was raised with the morals of my family over everything. Now, he doesn't have any priors, and he says that, I am my brother's keeper. So when my little brother phoned me saying he needed help getting on his feet, I jumped into action, moving him into my home and putting him to work in the club scene. Okay? And in December 2005, he ended up having an altercation with some individuals. One thing led to another, and the result was me being shot in the head, leaving me partially paralyzed. So here he goes to help his brother. He gets paralyzed, right? And about a year later, January 2006. A year goes by. This guy went through hell, getting shot in the head. Didn't fire back. Didn't do anything. And the question becomes, I got to find out what happened to the guy that shot him. We'll see about that. But in December 2005, that happened, and in January 2006. The Riverside, California Police Department claims someone discharged a firearm where several bullets were discharged at the Alberto Riverside restaurant between Magnolia and Arlington. I know exactly where that's at. Spent a lot of time driving the freeways of L.A. during my time there after law school and working for a number of law firms. I think I know every court from Anaheim to Santa Monica. But anyway, based on what the police alleged happened that day, listen to this. He was not even in the area, okay? He was not even in the area. So the police claim witnesses stated that a maroon truck drove by and started shooting at a group of people standing in front of the restaurant. Fortunately, no one was injured by the bullets. Okay, so here we have someone shooting at a group from a car. Nobody was injured. And after being discharged from the hospital, he was bedridden for weeks until he started to feel sick again and his head began to bleed again. And he had a lot of problems during that time. But the police claimed that now remember this, stated a maroon truck drove by and started shooting at a group of people standing in front of the restaurant. No one was injured. Now, later, he called when the police claimed that someone discharged a firearm. Okay, we're talking about this incident. He called Tara Nagata, a female friend at the time, to come and take him back to the hospital. On his way to the hospital with Miss Nagata, okay, so he's on his way to the hospital. He was pulled over by the Riverside undercover police officers for a traffic violation, then later claimed that he was identified as the shooter driving the maroon truck involved in the shooting that happened in front of Alberto's restaurant. Okay? He told, and here's his words, I told the officer that this had to be a case of mistaken identity and explained to him that not only did I not drive a maroon truck, but in fact I drove a bright red Ford Expedition, and that I also had been bedridden for the past 3 weeks because of the injury he sustained. So he's claiming he wasn't there. There's a lot of difference between a maroon truck and a Ford Expedition. And if these witnesses, people think that eyewitnesses are the best testimony there is. They're not. You can take two people that look at something and have two completely different stories. Now, the police confiscated, so we have the expedition, and he was bedridden. He claims he wasn't there. Now, the police searched Tara Nagata's car. Okay, so he's in Tara Nagata's car, finding a gun in her trunk, supposedly in a stuffed Scooby-Doo doll. And they lied and said, I gave it to her for Valentine's Day gift, when in fact she was married and many days after Valentine's Day. The police confiscated the gun as evidence for Alberto restaurant shooting. Later, the evidence came back. The gun the police confiscated, you got to have solid evidence. Second of all, nobody was shot. So we're looking at what? Attempted murder, which could be the highest charge here. Later, the evidence came back. The gun police confiscated from Miss Nagata's car did not match the gun fired in front of the restaurant. When compared the two guns, result came back as negative, as they were two totally different types of guns. 9mm Luger shells were found at the scene, and the gun found in Miss Nagata's trunk was a Brico Jennings 9mm. All right, so here we go. So let's stop right here, because this gets interesting. We got an eyewitness looking at a maroon truck. Okay, he doesn't have a maroon truck. He's got an alibi. The gun that they found in the truck in Nagata's car, Miss Nagata's car, that was supposedly the gun at the shooting, did not match. Okay? And now he's being charged, apparently, at this particular time, with attempted murder. Okay? Okay, we're going to get back to the Abijah Williams story in just a second, but to get to know Unite the People a little better, here's a minute and 30-second ad regarding what this great organization does. Here we go.
The sound you just heard is the sound of a prison door slamming. But there's one group of concerned citizens.
Oh boy, we had some audio difficulties there. So what we'll do is we will tell you who they are, okay? Yeah, that's what happens in live radio, always something new. So let me run this ad, and I'll just say it myself. And what it starts out with is a big bang. And I say, the sound you just heard is the sound of a prison door slamming. But there's one group of concerned citizens and defense attorneys called Unite the People that has opened up countless of prison doors. Unite the People was started by a dedicated prison reform advocate, Mitch McDowell, who was spurred on by a family tragedy and his brother sitting in prison for what could be a life sentence for, get this, an incident involving just words, no firearms, no nothing. In California and all over the country, prison overcrowding got so bad, sometimes 50 inmates to one bathroom, the U.S. Supreme Court in 2011 ruled it unconstitutional. With no solution in sight due to mass incarceration and long sentences, Unite the People took action, and since then many prisoners have found a quicker path to early release through Unite the People. Legal services, an affordable answer to an overloaded public defender's office and high-priced attorneys serving only the rich. So if you don't want to hear that prison door slamming and you have a loved one or friend languishing in prison, contact Unite the People at unitethepeople.org or call 888-245-9393 for a free consultation. That's unitethepeople.org at 888-245-9393, because everybody deserves a second chance. Okay, so that's Unite the People, and a great organization, by the way, and they're in Long Beach. And if you do have a problem, if one of your loved ones is facing a legal problem, spending a lot of time in prison when they shouldn't, contact Unite the People. But anyway, let's get back. I got a few minutes here before the break. with the Abijah Williams story, as he sits in prison now for 13 years for a crime he says he never committed. And basically the crime happened to be, no one was injured, by the way, although it's not wise to be shooting into somebody's car. Mr. Williams says it wasn't him, and so he's presenting evidence here, and he was pulled over in Riverside, being accused of this. So what happened, he, at that time, hired a lawyer named Daryl Exum, and because he knew he wasn't guilty in this alleged shooting at Alberto's restaurant, because the police had no evidence, he says. And even though they tried to use his female friend's gun as evidence, they failed because the gun was not a match, he says. Now, in his words, he says, after a speedy trial that my lawyer conned me into, lasting 5 days, deliberated 3 days, and transcripts being a total of 496 pages. You know, think about this. These white-collar crimes, you know, a guy in Washington, the trial will go on for 3 months. And here we got a man's life at stake. 5 days, 3-day deliberation, transcripts being a total of 496 pages, which I got a hold of and going through right now. But the key star victim and key star witness said it wasn't him. And his lawyer didn't help him at all. He says, I was absolutely shocked when they came back with a guilty verdict. In addition, right after I requested for a speedy trial, the prosecutor decided to come with additional charges since the gun that they confiscated did not match the evidence they had and no motive. They didn't have a motive in this case. Because you're thinking, okay, were these guys the ones that were involved in when he got shot? Okay? The prosecutor added the following charge to paint a picture and make him look, and he says to make, and these are his words, to make me look like a monster, a gang member. And they charged me with a felony enhancement, gang enhancement, given a motive and make me look, he says, bad, and none of the victims were gang members. After being found guilty and sentenced to 30 plus 40 years to life, I couldn't believe I was going to serve time for a crime I did not commit. Put yourself in those shoes, folks. This is why we have groups like Unite the People. And I know there's people out there that will say, put them all away. But that's not the right way to look at it. Just think about it. This is America. We have constitutional rights. But when you see a two-tier justice system at the top levels like we see today in Washington, what do you think goes on at the lower levels? And I am so happy that Unite the People decided to take this case. And I'm going to be following a little bit here about what he's up against. He filed an appeal. The appeal basically didn't deal with some very important issues that we're dealing with today. He filed a habeas corpus in Superior Court, then he filed another one in the Appellate Court, then he filed a review in the Supreme Court, some of them being done on his own. Much of the information I'm giving here was not presented in the habeas corpus, so Unite the People is taking this on and presenting this new information, hopefully, to get this man released. And so it takes a lot. When you take a case like this, think about it. A man's life's at stake. You got to go through countless documents and the hurdles of California court system. Hopefully there'll be a great outcome. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get back to this case in the second half hour. I do want to give you that corona, should I call it a PSYOPs report? Man, I'll tell you, my main goal here, baseball season starting, they're talking about, I was listening yesterday, everybody's life in America is going to be completely changed. Well, anyway, I can still watch baseball on TV, I guess, huh? Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. Greg Anthony here. Another jam-packed show. Glad you can be with me. And I just wanted to remind you, we're on every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. They're gracious enough to put out a YouTube video, which is very popular these days. I remember when I started in radio 25 years ago, boy, it was so much different. We were on a telephone line, there was no YouTube, and boy, have things changed. But anyway, I'm also on CRN Radio. That's Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. That's a nationwide program all over the place. So make sure you listen to CRN Radio, as well as First Amendment Radio, and a new podcast on the horizon. Greg Anthony's show here, and we're talking about Abijah Williams. Now, Abijah Williams is being represented by a group that we're featuring today called UniteThePeople.org, and they are a prison reform group in California started by Mitch McDowell. And this case is unbelievable. I talked with Abijah yesterday. He wants to file another habeas corpus with new information, and we went through some of the case in the first half hour. And there's literally no evidence, there's no DNA, there's no ballistics, nothing else. The eyewitness testimony has since recanted after being pressured, and I just got off the phone with the private investigator that Abijah hired, and I want to play a 5-minute clip with him, and then we'll get back to the nuts and bolts of this case. Now, I'm telling you, let's free Abijah Williams. I mean, this case sounds to me really fishy, and I'm going to dig into it in the 496 pages of information. And boy, if President Trump was listening, he'd pardon him. I'll tell you that. But we're going to give him the information after we file the case, and let's see what this guy, John Ricotta, was hired by Abijah to investigate his case, and he interviewed the main witness and found out some interesting things. And here's what John had to say just minutes ago, and sent me your investigative report. And it sounds like, man, this guy, there was no evidence, like you said, right?
They screwed him. They screwed him royally. Everything was bad about it. There was, let's say, 2 victims in the car. One testified that he had nothing to do with it. And the other one testified that he was the shooter, but that was because he was coerced by the police. Told they were going to arrest him for other things, and this, that, and the other thing, don't cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I spoke to him. We sat down in length at a McDonald's, out in Riverside, and met him, and then he actually came to my office. And, I don't think this, gangbanger is going to come all the way over to my office and sit down and give me a statement and sit down with a notary. And, if he wasn't telling the truth, I mean,
right.
I certainly believed everything he said. Basically they cornered this guy in a dark parking lot with one picture, no six-pack. A weapon that was found in some teddy bear in the car didn't match the ballistics for the gun that was used in the, so-called attempted homicides. So, yeah, I believe him. I met him up in prison. We sat and talked for a while. We went over as much as we can go over. I spoke to the witness. I believe him as being credible and was coerced. There's no ballistics, no DNA, no nothing putting, any kind of evidence putting.
Yeah, he said the gun didn't match.
There.
The ballistics didn't match. There was no eyewitnesses.
Nothing.
Nobody was hurt. Did you ever run down anybody that might have done it? Did they ever really look for somebody else?
They didn't. I'll put it this way. Their confidential informant that turned them to Abijah supposedly is the shooter.
Oh. The confidential informant of the...
Have you talked to Abijah and asked him if he knows who the shooter is?
No, something, that's one question they didn't ask him. I can talk to him again. But
Okay.
They think the confidential informant of the police is the shooter, right?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, he's the guy that went and gave up Abijah and said, oh yeah, he's the one that shot him, and so on and so forth. But
and that's not the guy you talked to.
He was the confidential informant.
But that's not the guy you talked to.
That is not. The guy I talked to is one of the victims, one of the people that were in that car.
Okay, I got you.
And he knows who did the shooting, and he knows it wasn't Abijah, but whatever the case may be, he got convinced by the police to, say it was him.
Holy shit. Yeah, this guy sounds like he doesn't...
Abijah definitely wasn't there. He had an incident at a strip club right before that incident and stuff, and, it doesn't all come together. So, I think he's totally innocent of this crime for sure.
Yeah.
What his past is all about.
I think we're going to file another habeas corpus with a lot of this information. I'm going to include your investigative report.
Okay.
That hasn't been seen by them because these filed 3 of them, and you have to present new evidence, so this might work. But I really appreciate... Go ahead.
Do you have the statement from the victim, reversing his...
Yeah, I got Parks', I got Parks' statement and your report.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Yeah, I think you got it. Like I said, there's nothing there putting him at the scene or anything else, so, it was definitely a sham.
Yeah. Oh, another thing, I do... Sure. In the future, I do radio, like, I do radio shows regarding people like him. Can I use your statement? Or would you come on the show?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, great. And I may have you on in a couple weeks on another show I'm doing once I get more information on this guy.
Okay.
All right,
good.
John.
All right,
Appreciate it. How's your business going?
All right.
Okay, there you have it. A statement by John Ricotta. He's a licensed private investigator from Upland, California, and John just laid it right out. Interesting. A police informant supposedly did the shooting, and that means that they had to realize, the prosecutors had to realize, that Abijah was not guilty of this crime and put him behind bars anyway. So I think we got to get to the bottom of this, and I'm so happy that Unite the People took this case on. And there you have it, John Ricotta's statement. I'll have him on again. And I'm going to get back to Abijah. We're going to also look into the prosecutor's office here, get some statements from their former attorneys, and see what really happened. Because it's really sad when you think about having an innocent man right now sitting behind bars. And the chances are, like John said, he's innocent. And let me go back here to the statement that Abijah gave me yesterday. And then I'm going to read you the investigative report by Ricotta that is on file, as well as the statement by Parks, the main witness. And what about this confidential informant who knows, he says the main witness knows the confidential informant did the shooting. Why isn't he talking? Could it be if he mentions it, he's going to be killed? We'll see. Over the years of being behind the wall, says Abijah, Mr. Williams, I've experienced losing both his parents, his grandmother, various family members, but most of all losing out on my very important time and memories that could have been spent with my only legacy, his daughter, which is his sole purpose of his fight. I talked to his wife yesterday as well. And he says to show the world there's nothing you can't do when you put God first and never give up. So one of the reasons, folks, I'm doing this show for him is that we're not going to give up on his case. Somebody's got to listen. And if you're out there and you want to get some info, send this show far and wide, please help us out. And also, Mr. Abijah says, Mr. Williams, excuse me, also my testimony and story, please let it be heard. I'm not looking for a handout, but I'm looking for justice. All I have is the truth, the facts, the law, and my faith. Despite numerous attempts in appealing my case, no one's given me a chance to prove my innocence. I pray every day someone with the power or money or even a platform will help me have a voice to gain my freedom. Based on Mr. Parks's notarized statement, which he sent to me, it is clear the police department and prosecutor did not care as long as they had someone go down for this crime. It's fine with them. But he says, I'm a human being. I have the right to a fair trial. And for the last 13 years, I've been incarcerated. I've missed so much good, so many moments with my family. But what is the most sad moment in my life is losing my family members that are dear to me while being in jail as an innocent man. I'm asking anyone that finds this letter that Greg is reading, and if you are in position to help me and know someone who can help gain my freedom, please take the time to get to know my case. Well, Unite the People's taking it on. I'm trying to do this show to get this message out, and let's hope we can get some justice for this man. And look at the evidence, he says. This is his words. Read the prosecutor's witness statement, particularly the description of the car, the color and model of the car. There's a huge discrepancy in why the police private investigator would meet a reliable witness in the dark parking lot. Why was not Mr. Parks brought to the police department with good lighting in order to properly identify the alleged accuser? It does not add up. Bottom line, there were no ballistics. Bottom line, I was set up. And I'm saddened how the criminal justice system is trying to incarcerate me, an innocent man, and there's supposedly justice for all. Okay, that was the words of Abijah Williams, who's now sitting in jail for 13 years for what looks like a crime he didn't commit. Okay, you heard the words of John Ricotta, and he was the private investigator hired by Mr. Williams. Now, all this information was not brought out at his other habeas corpus filings. So there's a good opportunity that if we can get some solid evidence, that we can get this man released and also get some explanations about who this confidential informant is, about also why this information wasn't brought out, who was the prosecutor in this case. We've got that information. But anyway, here's a recap of Mr. Ricotta's, this is his report to Mr. Williams. And he said, below is a recap of the investigative services we have conducted on your behalf. Investigator Ricotta met with Christy Morris Williams in September 2016 to discuss your case. She stated you were incarcerated on attempted murder charges stemming from an incident that occurred on January 25th, 2006 in Riverside County. I've got the case numbers here. She further stated you'd filed an appeal, and it was never heard or discontinued. It was agreed we would investigate your case and see if we could speak to a specific witness, Clifford Park, and attempt to find an attorney who would assist you on appeal pro bono. Okay? Miss Morris Williams provided us with your current transcripts and appeal information, which at the time was handled by attorney Daniel G. Corrin. The office attempted to contact Mr. Corrin with no success in speaking to him. This office made several attempts to contact several criminal defense attorneys in this area, with no success of them taking an appeal case pro bono. Okay, this office, okay, let me get back to this in a second. I will get back to this in 1 second. Okay, so they couldn't find an attorney. There's a question here whether the appeal was ever ruled on. We'll have to check into that. And let's go back to his report, okay? Let's go back to his report right here. Okay, on September 21st, 2016, investigator Ricotta met with Clifford Parks to discuss the case, that's the main witness, with him in Riverside County at a McDonald's restaurant. Mr. Parks stated he felt bad letting you stay in jail due to his testimony that he felt he was pressured to give, even though it was a false information. Parks was very clear you were not the shooter. We agreed to meet in our office to take a written sworn statement, which they did. On or about September 26, 2016, Ricotta met with Sparks at our office in Upland to discuss the case and take a written statement, and it was notarized by Andrea Sanchez, Notary Public. His statement is clear. You were not the shooter and was coerced into giving a false statement to the police and false testimony at your trial. On or about May 1, 2017, Ricotta met with Williams at Corcoran State Prison to discuss in person your case and findings. Williams gave a written authorization to Innocence Project to speak to previous attorneys, probation and parole officers, Department of Corrections, governmental agencies, media, as well as other persons deemed necessary in the evaluation of your case. As you are aware, we have spoken by phone on many occasions, mostly to discuss if we have been able to get an attorney to handle the appeal. As of this date and several calls, emails, faxes, and correspondence to many attorneys, we have not been successful. So anyway, that was done back in several years ago, and that was the statement by Mr. Ricotta, and you heard what he had to say in my phone conversation just a few minutes ago. Okay, so now let's read this sworn statement given by Parks, the main witness. And here's what he said. And this was notarized, and it said, Monday afternoon, January 25th, 2006, me and my friend Jermaine Spence went to Alberto's Mexican restaurant at 7050 Magnolia Avenue, Riverside, California for lunch. We were there for around 30 minutes. We came out of the restaurant, got into the car. I was in the passenger seat and he was driving. Before we can take off, somebody in a dark, possibly black or dark green mid-size SUV pulled up 10 to 15 feet away close to the passenger window and fired about 3 shots. Okay, I'm going to add here. Now we got a possibly black or dark green car. Okay? It happened so fast, we both ducked when we saw the gun pointed at us. After the 3 shots, we both were stunned that neither of us got hit. Somebody at the restaurant called the police. About 10 minutes after that, the police showed up. The detective showed up. So they were interviewing both of us, asking us, did we know who the shooter was? We both said no, and we stayed there for about an hour after the shooting. So I gave my number to the lead detective. So about a week after the shooting, the detective calls me and tells me he wants to meet with me. So we meet up in a dark parking lot around 9 p.m. at the Wiener Schnitzel on Central Avenue in Riverside, California. And he says he has evidence of a lot around 9 p.m. He has evidence of a possible shooter in the case. So he shows me a picture of one of the suspects, and I'm not real sure of the person I see in the picture because we were in a dark parking lot in the officer's car. So I tell the officer that I'm not sure that was the shooter, so he tells me he has evidence that points to him. So after that meeting, I don't hear from the detective again until I get a subpoena to go to court. So right before we go to court in the summer, I'd met with the detectives and the DA about the case. So I tell them I wasn't sure about the shooter. So they kind of get the feeling that I will say that in court. So they were kind of pressuring me and telling me that I know that he was the shooter. So after about being at the police station for 30 plus minutes, I leave. I said I still don't think he was the shooter, and they were talking about Williams. I then go to the court sometime in the middle of the week and remember it was summer. I was still unsure if the defendant was the shooter, but a female prosecutor convinced me on the stand that he was the shooter, and so I said it was. I was nervous and scared at the time, so I just agreed. It has been bothering me for 10 years now, and I strongly believe that Williams was not the shooter. I told a friend from the street that I was wrong, saying he was the shooter, and he went and told Abijah that I said that. The next thing I know, I got a call from a PI saying he wanted to talk about what I said, so I met with him. He asked me a lot of questions. I told him I'm sure Abijah was not the shooter. I felt pressure from the police and the DA to say it was him. I never participated in a lineup, and I was only showed one picture of Abijah, and they said it was him. I'm really sorry. I should have just stuck to the truth and refused to say it was him, knowing that it wasn't. Wow. So here we go, folks. We have a man sitting in prison right now for 13 years after this statement. What if it was you? What if it was one of your loved ones? And you're talking about we don't need criminal justice reform. Some of the people out there in my audience have said that to me on several other shows I've done about prison reform. Well, you know, on a case-by-case basis, I think we need to really look into this case. And I think that Unite the People has a strong, strong interest in getting this man freedom. So, the Abijah Williams case. Free Abijah Williams, right? Maybe if you're listening to this show, send it to at least 5 of your friends. Maybe they can send it somewhere else, and maybe we can get justice. Listen to this. We got information that maybe it was the confidential informant of the police that did the shooting. We got the main witness that put Abijah behind bars stating it wasn't him. We got a car. He doesn't drive either a maroon truck or a dark green or black mid-size SUV. He had alibi that he wasn't there. The ballistics didn't match. They had no evidence whatsoever. The eyewitness testimony has now recanted. And let's find out what the heck really happened here, right? So anyway, UniteThePeople.org takes on many other cases like this. And like I said, there's a case, the guy who founded Unite the People is named Mitch McDowell. I'm going to have him on the show. And his story about what happened to his brother is just as bad. We have another guy that's sitting in jail when he shouldn't. He was put in jail for, 30 to 40 years, and it was just for talking. It's an amazing story. And in a sense, that's what led Mitch to starting this group, is he's actually still trying to free his brother. All right. So if you know somebody, you want to help somebody out, contact unitethepeople.org. They're in Long Beach, California. They take cases all over the place, from all over the country. And it's really a great cause. And let me, for 1 minute, I got a minute here, let's get back to this Williams case. I had a chance to talk to his wife yesterday, to Abijah yesterday, the investigator today. And I can't imagine what he feels like sitting there for 13 years for a crime he didn't commit. And if the police are sitting on evidence here, and the prosecutor's sitting on evidence, then we need to get to the bottom of this and make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? All right, so if you want to look into it, come back to some of my other shows, and I'll let you know how this case continues and the progress that Unite the People's making with it. And, of course, I'm going to follow up with Abijah, going to find out a little bit more about who this confidential informant is, what the police and the prosecutor really knew, and we'll get back to you on the investigative journal on this case, as prison reform is really an important issue, and that's unitethepeople.org that we talked about today. All right, we'll be back tomorrow on the investigative journal.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.